Karen Kaushansky.
Great, the slot just before lunch. I'll try and make this fun and engaging. Moi, j'ai commencé ma carrière à Montréal. Peut-être une autre fois, je peux le présenter en français. Today we'll do English. So I started designing speech experiences in 1996. This was voice-activated dialing. The main use case was for my dad. He would get into his car every day and on his car phone be able to call home to tell my mom that he was on his way. We had 20 hard-coded address book entries, right? We had to predefine what those were, build models, and then dial *8 on your car phone and be able to say call home. We've come a long way. I recently moved from San Francisco to Switzerland. I'm a consultant. I work with companies pushing the boundaries of innovation in emerging technologies like conversational design, mixed reality, communication of autonomous vehicles. And before we dig into multimodal and the future of design, what I haven't seen a little poll for today is people building Alexa skills or building voice experiences for smart speakers, and those that are building kind of standalone experiences, whether that's on mobile apps or IVR or your own devices. So can I just have a show of hands, who's building for Alexa and Google and the smart speakers that are out there? Okay, and then who's building kind of the standalone experience? Okay, a few, great. So where are we today? You might ask Alexa, Alexa, is it gonna rain today? And she answers, rain is likely in San Francisco, there's an 85% chance. Input is voice, output is audio. We can't forget that the visuals on Alexa, the circular LED lights, are telling us vital information. Alexa has woken up to her wake word. She's listening to you or in the direction of where she hears her voice, that she's processing, thinking, maybe can't find a result. Add a screen to that. So now, with Alexa Show, Alexa, show me kids' shows to watch. And Alexa might say, here are kids' shows. And on the screen shows those results. The user can then say, Alexa, scroll right, Alexa, play number 3, or can actually go and use touch to select. In this case, input, voice and touch, output, audio, and screen. But even today, it's starting to get more interesting. With Google, you can say, okay, Google, show me photos of Margaret on the TV, right? Where your screen is now not part of the immediate experience, but is part of the continuous experience. Or you might say, okay, Google, what movies are playing near me? Okay, Google, send that to my phone. And I call that user-directed output, telling the output kind of where to go. Input, voice, output, audio, and screen. So what is multimodal? Multimodal interaction provides the user with multiple modes of interacting with a system, and it provides several distinct tools for input and output of data. So what is multimodal design? It's finding what is the right input and the right output for every part of the experience. And that might change at different points of the experience, and it might change depending on the context of the experience. Asking for weather in my car is very different than asking for weather when I'm looking at a screen. In these first few examples, it was an art and science to balance those audio and visuals, right? There are different ways to use audio with a screen. One, you can replace what is on the screen, essentially reading what is on the screen. And you might say, well, that's silly. But I loved my Windows phone. When I had a Bluetooth headset connected, It knew that, and it knew I wasn't holding the phone, I wasn't looking at the phone, and it would, indeed, read to me what was on the screen because I wasn't looking at it. You can complement the screen. So in that Alexa show example, where it said, here are kids' shows, Alexa is implicitly confirming it heard my request, and the results that it found are what's on the screen. So it's complementing what it is that I'm seeing. And then you can also use audio to just indicate to look at the screen. Bing! Now you can go and look at the screen to find out whatever's there. Audio can and should change based on the context. Do we know if you're looking at the screen? Do we know how far you are away from the screen? These are some of the things that can help tailor the experience to that particular moment in time. The future of voice goes beyond multimodal. I would say the future of voice is multidimensional. We need to talk about multi-input, multi-user, multi-device, multi-channel. So there are two types of input for multiple input. There's the method of interaction, and we've already talked about voice and touch and text and texting. But our devices are becoming much more enabled. Sensors, building with sensors, with cameras. We are moving towards being able to incorporate eye gaze, head pose, gestures, brain waves, right? These aren't mutually exclusive or sequential. These have to be used together. And these are what, when we combine these, are going to be able to create the most natural interactions. I want that one, right? Send that to my mom, right? That is coming. Then there's also the contextual input, right? The camera data, the position of the body, sensors, emotions, speed, heart rate, GPS. Who is speaking, right? We're going to be able to tailor the experience. Who is speaking, where they are, what's their state of mind, what are they looking at, what's their mood, what did they have for breakfast? Okay, maybe not that, but maybe one day, possibly. And then there's different types of output, right? Audio and screens, we got that. Lights, LEDs, haptics. But there's embodiments and gestures as responses, right? With the invasion of home robots and the realities of mixed reality, we're going to be interacting with characters that are going to be able to nod back to you, or to give a hand, or to give you a physical thumbs up, not an emoji, but like a physical. And we can't forget that sometimes just the action is output enough. When I say, hey, Curry, to my little home robot, can you go check on things in the kitchen? When it swivels and starts heading that way, I know it's heard me and is doing something in response. Multi-user, so the user is an input, right? We are seeing that Google and Amazon now let you set up voice profiles. And that lets you differentiate between who is using the device, which becomes really important. When I ask for adding something to my calendar or to play my particular playlist, this is different than my husband's. And multi-device, right? Now, if I say, okay, Google, and I have multiple devices that are listening, what should happen? Well, with Google, if you have multiple devices registered on your account, the devices themselves are talking to each other, figuring out which one should answer, what's the best one to provide that result. The experience you are building is not always the first interaction with your customer. Your voice experience can start mid-conversation. I love this book by Michal Levin, Designing Multi-Device Experiences. Right? There's different kinds of ways to use different devices. There's the consistent experience, so kind of replicating an experience across which device you use, and the continuous experience. You might start a conversation in one place and finish it on another. And you, as you build these experiences, need to be aware of that. Or the complementary experience, very similar to maybe Google, asking Google Home for something, but your pictures, your photos showing up on a different device. Go where your customers are. So BMW has an Alexa skill, right? They're building this amazing driving machine and focused on the in-car experience. But there are use cases outside the car. The conversation starts outside the car because that's where we start our morning. I want to know, is my i3 charged? When do I need to leave for my next appointment? So understanding where the conversation should start is really important. So here are some questions you might be asking as you're building your experience. Screen or no screen? You might already know what is the device that you're designing for, what is that medium? But if you do have a screen, you have to think about how to make that as rich as possible, taking in all the context that you can to tailor the experience. And I will say, what Max and I had a conversation yesterday about this. If you're building an Alexa skill, it inherently will work right on the Alexa show. You will have a screen, even though you might not be thinking about it. So how can you enrich your Alexa skill when there is a screen for those who use it on an Echo show? And thinking about how to make those interactions very natural, being able to reference kind of what's on the screen. I want the first one. Send this to my mom. Do you use audio? Certainly, if you're building a smart speaker, that's the only way potentially to interact. And these smart speakers are very public devices, right? They're not something that you carry in your pocket. But if you're looking at a big TV screen, there are choices to make. Do you use audio? Thinking about localization, especially here in Europe, what languages are you going to need to support? Or can you get away with just the beeps and boops of, for example, Curry, the home robot, right, who uses beeps and boops to communicate? And I love this quote by CEO of Mayfield Robotics. When something speaks back to you in a fluent natural language, you expect at least a child's level of intelligence. So setting that expectation right keeps it more understandable. Curry decided not to use language, and the reason is it would overpromise and underdeliver for the experience. And so they use beeps and boops to kind of set those expectations. We've heard about this before already today. Designing your persona becomes so important, right? And that persona is a standardized mental image of a personality or character that uses infer from the application's voice. This is a whole session onto itself, a whole day workshop, but definitely spending time to design the brand, design the personality to match your brand becomes very important. So what is the future besides lunch? So we know that chatbots are on the rise, right? It's not just on the assistants, but chatbots as well as a way to interact. App fatigue has settled in. And the main point of this is that people just want direct access to what they want, right? They want to cut through and get answers to their questions. And I believe that voice is the key to that appless world, right? Voice is what can work across all of these different apps to get at something, right? To get at an answer. I don't want to install or download a BMW app, a calendar app, a mechanics app. I just want to ask, when is a good time for me to bring in my car for servicing? We're also seeing the world is going to become your screen. So I am working in mixed reality, and I can say I've kind of seen the future. Eye gaze, head pose, gesture, they work together to interact with your world. None of these controllers, show me what that is. Tell me what this is. This is coming. Voice and other inputs are the controllers to create the realities that users want. We also know assistants are on the rise, but it's also interesting to think that assistants are talking to assistants, right? With the some of the stuff that's been happening recently with Microsoft and Alexa. It could be in a few years from now, your customers are assistants working on behalf of other people. And again, we're going to see the rise of mixed reality characters, that now the series, the Cortanas of the world are actually going to be characters that you might interact with and might be able to build relationships with you in ways that become much more natural because they can look at you and they can reach out to you, they can point, they can have emotions, they can recognize your emotions, and there's a way to kind of build those personal connections more with these kinds of characters. I see the future kind of in two tracks. One is interface interactions, and this is specific commands, deep linking into apps, being able to say, play the next episode of Game of Thrones. And then there's this relationship building, these characters that we're developing, right? To create these characters and voice interactions that become much more real, that can be full relationship building with emotions to help us kind of create some amazing experiences. So what now? I would say as you're building your voice experiences, think about the vision, that top-down approach of where is it all going? Is the future to be able to sit on a bench and talk to an elephant, right? What is it and where are you trying to go? And then you have to start small. I think we talk, think big, start small. Same thing. Start at the bottom. Start bottoms up. What is possible now? What are the steps to get to where we want to go? And then hopefully you've learned a couple of things here to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thanks a lot. Anyone has a question for Karen? Oh, yeah, just right there.
Very thought-provoking. So in the appless world, who will be the equivalent of the DNS or the arbiter that takes my utterance and decides who is actually going to process it?
Great question. I don't know how we're going to build this, but thinking about the user from a user perspective, I don't care, right? I mean, I just want this to work. So we'll figure, the technical details need to be figured out.
I guess so, as an app developer, I do care, because I want it to be me.
Ah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep.
Thank you, Karen. That was a great talk. In this new world where we've got all these different inputs and we've got language and touch and everything, how far can we get before we have to really get organized on unifying how we represent meaning and pass things around between things? So
you're asking standard. When do we have standards for this?
Kinda, but I realize standards is just a bit too narrow way of asking the question. But how limited do you think we are currently by the fact that we have no standard ways of representing meaning and language?
And I would build on that question as well. I mean, something that Jess touched on before, which was the tools just don't provide today the ability to really input this context. So
we don't even know how to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think we know the answers. I mean, this is people who are looking at building, eye gaze and head pose with language. They're building it themselves. So it is proprietary to start. It's where it's going to start.
Yeah.
But once those rich experiences come online and we see the possibility, we'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Just the last one, and we're going to eat right now.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much. Are there any limits to how human-like these experiences should become? Not from a kind of a technical perspective, but from a philosophical perspective. Should we be trying to kind of delineate computer conversation and interaction from human, or should we just try and kind of take it as far as we can go because that will be the easiest for people to understand?
You know, it's a great question. I've done a lot of thinking about, how human should we make our voice assistants? And the problem with that scenario is you're not actually seeing anything, right? You don't know what's on the other end of the line. And in that case, I really believe making them as human as possible is not the best thing because it sets the wrong expectations. But once you have these characters in some kind of alternate reality, the medium itself provides some expectation setting. And so making them as human enough, but we know they don't actually have a physical body, I think we should push the boundaries. I just think we should see what we can do and how, thinking about companionship or medical advice, my doctor, like some of these things that become much realer to create a different future seems worth exploring. Great, thanks.
Thank you.